You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes, and welcome to the show. It is Tuesday, June 10th, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I am back all in one piece from the second annual Texas Regional NORML Conference in Dallas, Fort Worth. Actually, it was in Fort Worth, let's be honest about it. Fort Worth, Texas, where a lot of history was made, friendships were formed, alliances were sealed, and my back was inked up. We'll talk about that in hour two, but before we do, let's go to our virtual studio in the beautiful legal state of Colorado, where Priscilla Solis is welcome for us. Priscilla Simon, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks, Russ. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How was your weekend?
Oh, it was nice. Pretty long. Nice and productive.
Yeah, well, good to hear it. We've got all sorts of news stories to get to right after our first break. Priscilla will bring you those in our 420 radio news, which includes the DEA threatening doctors in Massachusetts, Washington State bribery for getting yourself a DUI. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the chair of the Democratic National Committee, is under attack in Florida over medical marijuana. A man in Florida attending a concert gets his car busted into by cops. Recreational marijuana in Colorado, the sales figures are out for April, and we've got the latest updates on medical marijuana in New York. So we'll get to you, Priscilla, on the news on those in just a minute, okay?
Right on.
All right. Also coming up on the show today, we'll have a chance to go behind the headlines in Pennsylvania, where the parents of a middle school girl have basically gotten her pulled from the Honor Society because they don't want her drug tested for a sixth time. The girl's 14 years old. We'll tell you all about that and behind the headlines right after the news. And then for the second half of the show, I have got some great video to bring to you from that Texas Regional NORML Conference. Kinky Friedman, who once ran for governor of Texas and got about 1 out of 8 votes, also well known as a country music satirist and icon. He was there. Kinky Friedman speaking to the Texas Regional NORML Conference in Fort Worth. We'll bring you his entire speech coming up in the second half of the show. Also on the show today, in hour two, Toker Talk Radio, we take your calls at 971-533-7111. We'll take questions and answers regarding that Texas conference that just went down. We're going to have a chance to go off the warpath in hour two. There was a school shooting today in Troutdale, just about 10 miles away from me. We're going to talk a little bit about guns and the perspective some of my Texas friends brought to me on this issue. Also, sadly, this weekend, we lost one of our finest volunteers, one of the best activists I know, a guy by the name of Rob Denman, and we knew him as Grey Wolf here on our chat boards. He was our chat administrator and volunteered with me for 420 Radio on the Russ Belville Show at numerous events in Denver, Colorado. Sadly, he passed away this Saturday in his sleep in Oregon. He had moved from Colorado to Oregon to get involved with the legalization efforts here and put his activism to work here where it was needed. And unfortunately, his health would not let him continue with that activism. But he will never be forgotten here at 420 Radio. So we're dedicating today's show to Rob Grey Wolf Denman and officially designating our chat room as the Grey Wolf Memorial Chat Room. So I'd like to hear about your thoughts about Grey Wolf and your memories of him when we take your calls in hour two. We got to take a break right now, and when we come back, we will have the 420 Radio News with Priscilla Simon. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org. Thank you so much for your support.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, your ticket to the High Times Cannabis Cups. The Marijuana Business Association, or MJBA, are proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show. It is the mission of the MJBA to establish integrity and legitimacy, create common market standards, provide market intelligence, and develop best ethical business practices for participants in the emerging legal marijuana industry, including commercial hemp, medical marijuana, and recreational marijuana for adults. Learn more about the Marijuana Business Association and visit mjba.net to join today. That's mjba.net. Stony Sundays, replaying Monday at 1 Pacific on 420radio.org. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney." Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com. It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Priscilla Simon.
Hi, folks. This is your 420 Radio News for Tuesday, June 10th, 2014. The DEA is threatening doctors in Massachusetts with an ultimatum: resign from dispensary boards or lose prescription privileges. The Boston Globe caught up with physicians from the boards of firms that were granted some of the first 20 state dispensary licenses. Dr. Samuel Mazza, CEO of Debilitating Medical Conditions Treatment Centers in Holyoke, said DEA's Gregory Kelly told him, quote, "You either give up your DEA license or give up your position on the board, or you challenge it in court," end quote. When Dr. Mazza contacted the DEA, 3 officials on speakerphone told him, quote, "You're a chairman of an organization that is going to distribute a product that is against federal law," end quote. Dr. Mazza gave up his prescribing license as he is no longer in private practice. Dr. Walter Panis, Chief Medical Officer for Alternative Therapies Group in Salem, still sees private patients and hopes he's not forced to choose, explaining, quote, "Practicing medicine is the soul of my life. The dispensaries need good medical information, and how else are they going to get it except through physicians that are able to give that information," end quote. DEA would not answer a request for comment on the ultimatums or whether they are limited to Massachusetts only.
Yeah, these are more of the dying screeches of the T-Rex as he sinks into the tar pit, folks. This is the DEA freaking out over medical marijuana and doing any underhanded trick they can to try to undermine it. In the case of, I think it was Dr. Panis, he's just a consultant. He's on the board as a consultant to help these guys understand that, hey, you're running this medical thing. I'm a doctor. Let me tell you a little bit about medicine. Let me tell you a little bit about patients and how to deal with them. And if we're going to force all these doctors to not be affiliated with any of these dispensaries, isn't that setting patients up for less care than they deserve? Have you heard of anything like this happening in Colorado, Priscilla?
No, not that I have yet, and it just seems to be counterproductive because, you know, you want the most advanced medical attention available out there, and we're obviously pretty far ahead in Colorado, and so I wish people would just get on the ball with it.
Yeah, that's such a shame, but again, just the DEA acting out, trying any trick they can to try to put a monkey wrench into legalization, and it pretty much goes along with my theory that they know they've lost the issue of medical marijuana, and now it's just a matter of delay. Delay and obstruct, delay things long enough until they can get Sativex and Epidiolex and all these things through FDA trials, and maybe they can hold off on the other 28 states from passing medical marijuana laws.
So motorists in Washington state are being bribed to submit to alleged, quote, research on impaired driving, then nabbed by cops down the road if their saliva or blood tests positive. Pacific Research Institute and Evaluation, or PIRE, has received funding from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to set up roadside samplings of drivers' saliva and blood to determine how many drivers may be on the roads at all times of the day. Volunteers receive $10 for their saliva and $50 for their blood, and if their sample shows evidence of drug or alcohol impairment, Pyre will provide a ride home. But Pyre also pays the overtime for law enforcement officials to monitor their survey and the roads beyond the checkpoint in case an impaired driver decides to reject the free ride home. The same survey was recently conducted in Pennsylvania, which led to a lawsuit that suggested while Pyre employees claim to be independent researchers, they were actually working under the supervision of the Reading, Pennsylvania Police Department. The lawsuit claims that Pyre forced a man, Richard Neves, to submit to a cheek swab even after he refused on 3 separate occasions.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of data. I want data collection, but I don't want data collection that forces people to give up their rights to not be searched and their rights to not incriminate themselves. And that's what Pyre is requiring in these circumstances. Folks, your saliva, your blood is not worth 10 or 50 bucks, especially when there's going to be a cop down the road waiting to see who's been stopped there and who's refused the free ride home. Just reject this. If you're in Washington State and you hear about this, you're driving along and this is required of you, just reject it. And understand that under Washington State law and Constitution, I should say, DUI checkpoints are unconstitutional in Washington. So they have to get this through your voluntary assent. There is no penalty for you to reject this. There's no penalty for you not to go along with it and take the money. So whatever you do, don't do that.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the Florida representative and chair of the Democratic National Committee, is taking increasing criticism over her anti-medical marijuana views. Representative Wasserman Schultz was one of only 16 Democrats who voted against the recent House amendment to defund DEA raids in medical marijuana states. She also recently voted against allowing VA doctors to discuss the medical marijuana with veterans seeking relief from pain, injury, and post-traumatic stress. Regarding Florida's pending medical marijuana vote in November, Representative Wasserman Schultz said, quote, "I do not believe we should make it easier for those seeking to abuse the drug to have easy access to it," end quote, putting her in opposition to 88% of the state's voters and 93% of Democrats, according to the most recent Quinnipiac poll. Americans for Safe Access has begun running TV ads in her district explaining that Representative Wasserman Schultz, quote, thinks it's okay for marijuana patients to go to federal prison, end quote. John Morgan, the millionaire backer of Florida's constitutional amendment to legalize medical cannabis, said, quote, "I will not give a penny or raise a penny for the National Party while she's in leadership, and I have given and helped raise millions," end quote.
Yeah, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Okay, so if you don't know the way the politics breaks down on this, she's chair of the Democratic National Committee, the DNC. DNC is considered kind of that mainstream center of the Democratic Party that's well aligned with Wall Street and in bankers and insurance and somewhat the healthcare industry. And I think that's probably where it's coming from here in Wasserman Schultz's case, is the healthcare industry. She's against 93% of the people in her state that support medical marijuana, and this is a big deal, these commercials being run against her. John Morgan, who put the millions of dollars to get question 2 on the ballot in Florida, has raised millions of dollars in the past and actually hosted fundraisers for Debbie Wasserman Schultz and had her in his home to help raise and bundle millions of dollars for the Democratic Party. Democrats, your entire party is suffering because of the intransigence of this chairwoman on medical marijuana, and you better get with the program.
One man attending a Juicy J concert in Tampa, Florida, was surprised to find that his customized work truck was broken into and damaged. But far from being the work of criminal vandals and thieves, this was the work of the Tampa police, who left a note explaining that they had broken into and searched his truck, quote, for marijuana due to the strong odor coming from the passenger side of the vehicle, end quote. The cops claimed that a drug-sniffing dog alerted to his truck, which is an enormous crew cab pickup that sits three feet off the ground. Given the nature of Juicy J and his fans' love for marijuana, it is likely there was a, quote, strong odor all throughout the parking lot. Tampa police say, quote, while the search is legal, it's not typical, end quote. The man who sells the big rig air horns mounted in his truck found, quote, the horns weren't working, all the electronics were ripped out. end quote. Of course, police found no marijuana whatsoever in the man's truck.
Of course, there was no marijuana in the truck. Oh my
And
God.
a nice little note.
Yeah, just a nice note. As if he'd been bumped into in the parking lot. Oh, excuse me, I dented your fender. No, the cops broke into the guy's truck, ransacked through the truck, broke the air horns, ripped out the electronics, and then leave a oops, sorry note. And it doesn't look like they're going to repay him for any of the damages involved in here as well, because it was, as they consider, a lawful search. Now, he's got a lawyer and he's suing these guys, and the lawyer is suing the cops, I should say. And the lawyer says this is not a lawful search because you have to have what's called an exigent circumstance. Exigent circumstance, like an emergency necessary. Like if you see if it's a locked up truck and there's a baby or a dog in there on a hot day, well then yeah, cops can break in there because, if they don't, baby or dog is going to die. What is the exigent circumstance of a marijuana smell? What possible thing could the marijuana that they allege to have been in the truck, what could it have done if they had just waited there and waited for the guy to come back and then search the truck? There was no emergency there. The marijuana wasn't going to magically disappear from the truck or evaporate or teleport away. This is just, once again, more overreach by police who just think the smell of pot is their exception to the 4th and 5th Amendment, and they do whatever the hell they want.
Wrong. Recreational marijuana sales in Colorado brought in the most monthly tax revenue yet in April. According to the data released Monday, the state reaped $3.5 million in sales and excise taxes and sold $22 million worth of recreational marijuana products in the month. That included the popular 420 marijuana holiday that brought in thousands of tourists. Medical marijuana tallied another $31 million in product sales in April. For the first third of 2014, this makes $11 million in tax revenue brought in from the recreational marijuana alone, with another $7 million from the lower tax medical marijuana. Bank.
Yeah, sounds like you guys are making some bank there in Colorado. So, all right, let me do some calculations on this. First third of 2014, 11 million in tax from recreational, 7 from medical. That's $18 million in taxes. So, by the Sabbath conjecture, that means you must have suffered $180 million in marijuana-related costs. The state must be on fire. The roads are just packed with marijuana wrecks, overdoses in the hospitals. Have you seen the $180 million in damage, Silly?
I mean, I'm lucky that we have our Wi-Fi towers still, so that way I can talk to you. I mean, it is crazy out here. Yeah. It's crazy.
It's a pot zombies in search of strains. Of course, we're being facetious. We haven't seen that sort of damage in Denver. It's still a beautiful place to live in. In fact, the Republican National Convention might be held there in 2016. I wonder if we can give them a little something to talk about.
I think so. And finally, Assemblyman Al Graf succeeded in getting a ban on, quote, confections, carbonated beverages, and products that are all marketed to children in New York's proposed medical marijuana law. Graf voted no on medical marijuana on May 27th, but hasn't indicated how he'll vote if the amended bill makes it back to the Assembly floor. The Assembly adjourns on June 19th, and Senate sponsor Diane Savino said she is, quote, very confident, end quote, medical marijuana will reach a vote before then. Governor Andrew Cuomo, who once virulently opposed any medical marijuana law, has now said he'd back a program that has controls and that, quote, makes sense. Good for him.
Controls that make sense. Yeah. What makes sense to the governor is any medical marijuana program that can't possibly work well for patients. That's what would make sense to the governor. Diane Savino out in the Senate here has stripped provisions that allow people to use medical marijuana for glaucoma because the ophthalmologist said it's not the best medicine anymore. Well, it doesn't matter if it's the best medicine. It's the cheapest for a lot of people. They've also,
and it works for some people.
Yeah, and it works for some, And it's it stripped out, made it much, much harder for people with any sort of chronic pain. Made it, I believe in the Senate version, they've got one of these Minnesota provisions where you're not going to be able to access raw plant. You'll just have tinctures, sprays, and oils because we wouldn't want people using the 15% THC bud. Let's give them the 80% oil. Makes no sense whatsoever. It's just that what will make sense to Andrew Cuomo in New York is something that wouldn't make sense to any of us out west who've seen how a functional medical marijuana law actually works. And it always bothers me. These people say, well, we don't know how it's going to work. We don't have enough studies. We don't have enough information. Hell, we've had medical marijuana out here in the West for over a decade and a half. How about you take a look about what's working out here and try to emulate that instead of reinventing the wheel? Oh my goodness, it's the bell. Big Daddy Fink hates that bell, and I haven't had enough time yet to record some new ones. But stay tuned, Big Daddy. We'll have some new ones. Silly Simon's on the vapor pen already. She can't wait for 420. 420 right there in Denver. We got an hour to go. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
.420 Radio, turning red states and blue states green. Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces quality custom designs for t-shirts, hats, and other apparel. Handmade Apparel is the official design shop for 420 Radio, among many clients who rely on Adam Hand for everything from short-run custom projects to full-run clothing lines. Visit handmadeapparel.biz to browse the selection of handmade gear or to get a personal quote for your own designs. Handmade Apparel, a proud supporter of 420. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you.
Welcome back, everyone. Time for us to go behind the headlines. And you know, the main reason I am here all comes down to drug testing. So whenever I see a drug testing headline, it's something that I just have to get a little behind the headlines on. And this is a young girl in Pennsylvania, Susquehanna, I believe is the way her school is pronounced, Susquehanna. She's an honor student in Susquehanna, and she is kicked out of the Honor Society, not because she got a B. She's a straight A student, not because she got a B, but because her parents won't let her take a P test. In fact, this young girl, she's 14 years old now. She's in the 8th grade, and she's already been drug tested 5 times in her school career. Starting first with 5th grade, she had to take a drug test. And then she had to take another drug test in 6th grade. And then she had to take 3 drug tests in 7th grade because her school district, like school districts all over the country, randomly tests students starting as early as 5th grade if they are participating in extracurricular activities or if they apply for parking permits. If you want to be in an extracurricular activity in school these days, or you want to drive your car to high school, you have to take drug tests. I don't know if a lot of people that aren't parents know this, but it's absolutely true. Kids as young as 5th grade being drug tested. Now, her name is Layla May, and her parents are Michael and Melinda May. And parents refused to sign a permission slip for the 8th grade, right? They'd already accepted it for 5th, 6th, and 7th. They decided enough is enough. They're not going to do this for the 8th grade, saying that she shouldn't have to face another embarrassing urine test because all 5 of her tests came back negative. Melinda May said, quote, "We were so tired of this happening over and over again, so we said, what can we do to make it stop? It's sad that we had to resort to taking her out of the Honor Society. It's ridiculous." Michael May say he and his wife, quote, "went to the principal, school board, superintendent. They're all lame on this issue. We even contacted the ACLU. They said it was concerning, but sadly, legal. We pulled Layla out of National Honor Society over it, he continued. That's what caused her to be tested. My straight A student. Now, she, of course, is not the only student who's being drug tested, nor the only parents that are upset about it. Kristen Cassell's 10-year-old daughter, Natalie, who just completed 5th grade, was tested 3 times last school year. 3 drug tests for a 5th grader, people. Now, the superintendent of Susquehanna, Kent Smith, said during a recent interview that he believes the drug testing policy that they started in 2002 deters students from using drugs and that he isn't interested in recommending a change. The Mays, on the other hand, say the testing does more harm than good, deterring students from participating in healthy educational activities. And this is the part I've always brought up. If you're really worried about kids getting into drugs, don't prevent them from getting into extracurricular activities. That's where you want them. We've got numerous studies showing that kids that participate in extracurricular activities are less prone to peer pressure and less likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. So we have a policy that incentivizes exactly the opposite of that. And not only that, incentivizes the use of more dangerous substances, like some of the drugs that will flush from a person's system faster than marijuana will, like alcohol, which will flush from a person's system faster than marijuana will, and of course, this deadly, sometimes deadly K2 spice synthetic marijuana that's often not tested for. The whole reason it even exists is because people are trying to get away with beating a drug test. They like the effect of marijuana, but they don't want to get busted for the drug test. Now, this is not to say that Layla May was interested in marijuana whatsoever. Obviously, by all accounts from her parents, she was not interested in any drug. She's a straight A student. But these policies that we put into effect that require drug testing violate our 4th and 5th Amendment. They assume that a child is guilty of being a drug user until proven innocent. Now, the recent court cases have shown that these school districts have to show a need. They have to show that there's actually some potential for drug abuse going on in their school. And one of the most recent schools that has done this, South Middleton, spent $50,000 a year. $50,000 a year in Pennsylvania, South Middleton School District, to drug test their students, according to the assistant superintendent. And guess how many positives they got over 5 years? 3 positives. $50,000 a year, $250,000 spent over 5 years to find 3 positive drug tests and no positive drug tests whatsoever in the prior year. So how does this tell us that there's some sort of exigent need here for drug testing? The court has said that there has to be evidence there's a drug use problem. If you're only catching 3 people in 5 years, it kind of suggests to me you don't have a drug use problem at that school. Of course, the way drug testing works is the way that the drug war works. If they catch a lot of people using drugs, they'll say, see, we need drug testing to catch these people. And if they don't catch a lot of people, they'll say, see, we need to keep drug testing to keep deterring these people. Layla May's drug tests cost anywhere from $21.25 to $45 per test. That one school district is spending $50,000 a year on drug testing. And yet they want to tell us that for our kids in public schools, the teachers have to buy the school supplies and the school districts can't afford to fix the buildings and they can't afford to buy new textbooks. But gosh, there always seems to be plenty of money to seize the kids' piss. We got to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to get kinky. That is Kinky Friedman. Stay tuned.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Cannabis Outreach Collective is an alternative health and wellness option located in Gladstone, Oregon, that serves patients in the Portland area and beyond. You can find out more about Cannabis Outreach Collective on Facebook at COC503 or by emailing cannabisoutreachcollective503@gmail.com or by telephone at 503-853-1319. Jorge Cervantes TV, replaying Thursdays at 1 Pacific on 420radio.org. Wood Pipe Smoke Shop and Speakeasy is your source for cannabis community gear in southern Wisconsin. Owners Brian and Tammy Wood are located in Kendall, just outside of Madison, and they've got everything for the smoking enthusiast. They're open noon to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday and can help you with your detoxification therapies as well. Call 608-466-7473 or email woodpipes@yahoo.com for more information.
Activism begins with ACT. The Russ Belville Show features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
Welcome back, everybody. 31 after the hour, and I just returned from Texas, from Fort Worth, where I was a participant in the second annual Texas Regional NORML Conference. And all week this week, we'll be providing you highlights in our second half hour of the speakers and panels that took part in this amazing conference. And folks, this is the way NORML conferences are going to go, probably for the time being, is regional. I attended the Southern Cannabis Regional Conference. This is the Texas Regional Conference. I know Missouri does one. I think Oregon is putting one together. NORML has just found, I spoke with Eric Altieri from NORML, and he was just talking about how now that marijuana is so diverse, we go everywhere from legalization in Colorado and Washington to attempting legalization in Oregon and California to stark prohibition still in Texas and other places. So their point was it's hard to come up with a national agenda. It might be better time spent to do these regional agendas so that we're not talking about stuff that would only be germane to Seattle or Denver if we're talking about Dallas or Austin. So to join us at this event, we had Kinky Friedman, the Texas icon. Here he is for you.
Give it up for Mr. Kinky Friedman.
Thank you very much. Thank you, folks. You know, if you fail at something long enough, you become a legend. And that's pretty much what's happened to me. I have about a 4.5 hour presentation prepared for you. No, it needs to be that long because you'll see why towards the end of it. No, I'll keep my remarks brief. I'm 69 years old, though I read at the 71-year-old level. And I've got my last will and testament all worked out. When I die, I am to be cremated, and the ashes are to be thrown in Rick Perry's hair. Now, speaking of Rick, I was showing some friends of mine around Austin recently, and one of them said, "Hey, that's a beautiful statue of Rick Perry you all put up there." And I said, "That is Rick Perry." By the way, the statue of Willie it's not a bad statue, but they paid a thin sock wearing Yankee a lot of money to do that statue, and it looks exactly like Sean Connery. Take a look at it when you're passing that at downtown Austin. Speaking of Willie gave me some great advice before I got into politics, and it served me so well in politics as in life. And what Willie said was, if you're going to have sex with an animal, always make it a horse. Because that way, if things don't work out, at least you know you've got a ride home. just completing a tour of Europe. This is also Willie's idea, but it's a damn good one. He said, never take a day off. Do 35 consecutive shows, which I wound up doing in 7 countries. And you will start running on pure adrenaline, and you'll hear Hank Williams speaking to you, and Lenny Bruce, and all that kind of thing. And it happened. And you get really raw and pure. And I even did, I did about 12 shows in Norway and Sweden and all through England, Ireland, Scotland, and even a show in Germany. And of course, as you may know, the Germans are my second favorite people, and my first is everybody else. But at any rate, I can tell you that Willie, of course, is I myself do not smoke pot very much. I think the recreational side of it is not the important thing. Now, Willie, it's a way of life with Willie. Willie smokes just a boatload of pot every day. He never forgets, he never, misses a note. He never forgets a lyric. He's always right, punctually he's there. He does the shows, which is remarkable. And as for me, it's harder for me to get up here and talk to you than it is for most entertainers or artists. And maybe it's kind of an intimate crowd, I can share this with you, but I was molested by a rodeo clown when I was a young child. All right, I was 27 years old. Let's get onto the pot thing. I only smoke pot when I'm with Willie. That's the only time, and I do it out of Texas etiquette. It's just a polite thing to do. The last occasion was February, and I was coming back from Australia, and Willie and I did a show together in Maui. So we're at Willie's house, and I don't smoke the stuff, and then I smoked about 10 of these joints with him, and my facial muscles became paralyzed. I couldn't smile. I could not smile, and I got so high I needed a stepladder to scratch my ass. Right? And so we did the show. And walking out of Willie's house, walking out of his garage in Hawaii, there is a punching bag about 6 feet up in the air. And I swear this is true. Willie, I'm walking on my knuckles, Willie kicks this punching bag real hard with his foot, kind of just, not making a big deal out of it. He just leaps up and kicks the shit out of the thing. And then he tells me, well, I'm a black belt. The man's 82 years old. I mean, this is remarkable. So he could be a poster boy for pot. And we've discussed this. I've learned so much in this past campaign that the number one hemp-producing country in the world, I think most of you know who that is in this group. Yes?
China.
What is it?
China.
China is great. Well, actually, China is the number one hemp-producing country in the world. Now, do you know who their biggest customer is? No. It's Willie Nelson. It is us. Of course it's us. So I didn't win this last campaign. The crowd picked Barabbas, okay? They said, kill Jesus, free Barabbas. That's what they usually do. That's how Rick Perry got to be governor. They picked Barabbas quite often. And so the people have spoken, the bastards. And 1% of the people voted in this last runoff, and we lost by a couple points. I'm absolutely convinced that people are creatures of narrow habit, and people that don't vote in the Democratic primary, like me, I don't vote in primaries usually, and runoffs and crap like that. Those people are not going to do that. You're not going to get libertarians and independents to cross, but you would have got them in November. That would have been a real referendum. I'm just so impressed with Colorado, which is a little bitty pissant state. Whatever they make, every week they turn around and say, hell, here's another 116 million we didn't realize we were going to get. Folks, multiply it by 700. You got an idea what Texas might get. Right now, 76% of straight doctors, I don't know if they're gay or if they're not, most gay. 76% want to prescribe pot. The reason is very simple. Again, I'm not a pot smoker, really. So I'm saying that Texas is 49th in education. I'm the only candidate, or I was the only candidate, who even mentioned pot or hemp. Because that's how we pay for it. That's how you fund it. Wendy Davis, barely mentioned it. Greg Abbott, of course, we know where he stands on it. Now, in 2006, when I ran for governor as an independent, I was the only candidate that we know of in America who endorsed gay marriage in 2006. That was when Hillary and Obama were against it. Today, what, 8 years later, is it? Everybody. Ted Cruz is for it, for Christ's sake. The whole world is for it. And I am on record in 2006 as saying they have every right to be just as miserable as the rest of us. Let me just very quickly, there's no point that this, you folks know at least as much as I do about this, but medicinal marijuana, the fact that we have arguably the finest cancer hospital in the world, MD Anderson, with no medicinal marijuana program is absolutely shameful. And Colorado is showing us the proof. To have MS and to wake up paralyzed, wake up blind, wake up, you never know what's going to happen with that disease. Pot seems to ameliorate that situation. Epilepsy, everybody knows, it's a famous thing with a little 5-year-old kid. But to cut seizures, life-threatening seizures on a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old with one little drop of liquid pot, cut it from 100 a day to 1. We should be all over this. We're not. Colorado is and Israel is. America is not. In Israel today, they're giving pot to autistic children. They're giving it to Alzheimer's people. I don't mean a few of them. I mean in big clinics and kibbutzes and what do you call those places where people live? Retirement centers, And major hospitals all over Israel are giving it to patients because it makes you feel human after chemo. Chemo kills more, everybody knows this shit. Why am I telling you this? Chemo kills more people than the disease. According to Lance Armstrong, who everybody hates, a couple of years ago everybody loved Lance. Lance had a good point. He said the biggest enemy we'll ever face is cancer. 1 in 3 of us is going to have it affect our life very strongly. And you die because you can't sleep for 6 months, you can't eat. You're dizzy and nauseous the whole time, your immune systems go down, and you die. And that is mostly chemo. And pot can treat all that. I'm not, I'm not a long-haired hippie telling you, hey, try some pot, it'll fix whatever's wrong with you. Like some alcoholic will say, have a drink, you'll be fine. That's not the case. The case is that the stuff seems to cure these diseases, and Parkinson's is another one. It makes these people, it makes their lives really bearable, more than bearable. So Colorado has become this great healing sanctuary, and people are coming from all over the country. And Texas, meanwhile. Texas is we're going to get it right. We always get it right after we try everything else. That's what we do in Texas. And right now I look at those candidates, and boy, they are not embracing the future. So it's really up to us to decide, do we want to be seceders or do we want to be leaders? Because if Texas legalizes, It is the end of the war on drugs. And that, if you don't talk to current law enforcement. I've talked to all kinds of law enforcement. I haven't met one yet who is not for legalization. They have their reasons, which is they're damn tired of some guy having a few drinks and beating up his wife. And they've got to deal with it. And they've never had a case of a guy smoking a few joints and beating up his wife. Because the guy forgets to beat up his wife. He beats up a bag of Doritos. What I thought is we will keep this brief because yesterday was D-Day. I wanted to read to you a short chapter from the book Heroes of a Texas Childhood. 23 heroes of mine when I was a kid. And I'll be over there where Steve is afterwards. And of course, the book and the CDs are $20, $20, $20. But today, we're going to have the Israeli discount, okay? If you buy multiple items, we knock 10 bucks off every time you do. So you could buy 3 CDs and 1 book. It's normally $80, but it would only be $50. And of course, I will sign anything but bad legislation.
Yeah.
So in honor of D-Day, let me just say that young people today, I don't know how many people in this room know who Audie Murphy is. Most of you do. Most decorated soldier in World War II. But I talked to a whole group of college kids. Absolutely none of them knew if he was a hip-hop artist or a basketball player. Had no clue. They did not know upon whose shoulders they stood. So I would just say that your heroes are very important. Sir, if I wanted to interview you and find out who you really were, the fastest way is to ask you who your heroes were. And if you told me Donald Trump, Bill Gates, and Justin Bieber, I would know what I need to know, And I'm not suggesting that they are, yes. So here are 23 of mine, and I think inspiration is real important. I think what you guys are doing and what I'm trying to do, the main heartbreak for me is that the Ag Commissioner's Office has $700 million that you can start pilot projects and grants with new crops and technologies. We could have broken hemp big time in Texas. And then when Greg Abbott comes legally to try to shut it down, you have your phalanx of lawyers, your Dick DeGuerins and all the great lawyers of Texas ready. And we get it out of the legislature, because we shouldn't look to the legislators. Those guys are midgets. Don't look to them for leadership or advice. There's a few good ones that have been banging their head against the wall for decades to try to get pot through or hemp through, with no luck. So we get it into the courts, and it will jumpstart it. It will move fast. How we're going to do that now, we will see. But certainly I'm glad to be done with politics. My definition still holds of politics. Poly means more than one, and ticks are blood-sucking parasites. This chapter is about my dad, who died 12 years ago. I've kept it in the present tense, and I think you should keep everybody you love in the present tense as long as you possibly can. It's called Tom Friedman, the Navigator. Because I'm the oldest living Jew in Texas who doesn't own real estate, and given my status in general as a colorful character, there are those who profess to be surprised that I ever indeed had a father or a mother. I assure you, I had both. For many years, my parents owned and directed Echo Hill Ranch, a summer camp near Kerrville where I grew up, or maybe just got older. I remember my dad, Tom Friedman, talking to all the campers on Father's Day in the dining hall after lunch. Each summer, he'd say essentially the same words. For those of you who are lucky enough to have a father, Now's the time to remember him and let him know that you love him. Write a letter home today. Many years have passed since I last heard Tom's message to the campers, but love, I suppose, has no sell-by date. When my father was a young boy, growing up in the Chicago of the late 20s, his first job was working for a Polish peddler. The man had a horse and cart that was loaded up with fruits and vegetables, and Tom sat on the very top. Through the streets and alleys of the old West Side they'd go, with the peddler crying his wares in at least 5 languages, and my father running the purchases up to the housewives who lived on the top floors of the tenement buildings. There were trolley cars then, clotheslines strung across the city alleys like medieval banners. My father still remembers the word the peddler seemed to cry out more than any other. The word was kartoffel. It is Polish for potato. In November 1944, my mother, Minnie, gave birth to me in a manger somewhere on the south side of Chicago. I lived there 1 year, couldn't find work, and moved to Texas, where I haven't worked since. And all this time, my father was far away, fighting for his country and his wife and a baby boy he might never see. Tom was a navigator in World War II, flying a heavy bomber for the 8th Air Force, the old B-24, also known as the Liberator, which in time it was. Tom's plane was called the I've Had It. He flew 35 successful missions over Germany, the last occurring on November 9th, 1944, 2 days after he'd learned that he was a brand new father. As the navigator, the responsibility fell to him to bring the 10-man crew back safely. In retrospect, it's not terribly surprising that fate and the powers that be had selected Tom to be the navigator. He was the only one aboard the I've Had It who possessed a college degree. He was also the oldest man on the plane. He was 23 years old. After each successful mission, it was the custom to paint a small bomb on the side of the plane. In the rare instance of shooting down an enemy plane, a swastika was painted. When one incoming crew, however, accidentally hit a British runway maintenance worker, a small teacup was painted on the side of the plane, practically engendering an international incident. Tom was a hero in what he still refers to as the last good war. For his efforts, he received the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters and the heartfelt gratitude of the crew. Yet the commanding officer's first words to Tom and his young compatriots had not been wrong. The CO told them, look at the man on their left and look at the man on their right. When you return, he'd said, they will not be here. This dire prophecy proved to be correct. The mighty 8th suffered a grievous attrition rate during the height of the war. Like most true war heroes, Tom rarely talks about the war. My sister, Marcy, once saw Tom sitting alone in a darkened room and asked, is everything all right, Father? To this, Tom replied, the last time everything was all right was August 14th, 1945. That was the day Japan surrendered. On a recent trip to O'Hare Airport in Chicago, I commandeered a limo and drove through the area where Tom had grown up. There were slums and suburbs and Starbucks, but the trolley cars and the clotheslines and the peddler with his horse and cart were gone. Kartoffel, I said to the limo driver, but he just looked straight ahead. Either he wasn't Polish or he didn't want any potatoes. Today, Tom lives in Austin with his new wife, Edith Kruger, and his 2 dogs, Sam and Perky. He has 3 children and 3 grandchildren. He eats lunch at the Frisco, still plays tennis with his old pals. He did not, as he contends, teach me everything I know. Only almost everything. He taught me tennis. He taught me chess. He taught me how to belch. He taught me to always stand up for the underdog. He taught me the importance of treating children like adults and adults like children. He's a significant American because by his example, his spirit, and his unseen hand, he's guided children of all ages safely through the winding, often torturous courses of their lives. One of them was me. Tom's war is long over. Indeed, the whole era seems gone, like the crews who never came home, lost forever among the salt shaker stars. And yet, when the future may look its darkest, there sometimes occurs an oddly comforting moment when, with awkward grace, the shadow of a silver plane flies inexplicably close to my heart. One more mission for the Navigator. I thank you kindly.
In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
McGruff here with Regina to sing Users Are Losers.
You know it's okay to say no. I'm telling you it's true. Learning when to say no.
Say no.
That's what you need to do. Learning how to say no.
Say no.
Can make a winner of you. 'Cause users are losers and losers are users. So don't use drugs. Don't use drugs. Winners don't use and users don't win. So don't use drugs. Don't use drugs. If you know a user even part of the time,
Tell them to quit. Take a bite out of crime.
users are losers and losers are users. So don't use drugs.
And help me take a bite out of crime.
America.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org.
The only time I switch is tempos on instrumentals.
Welcome back, everybody. That's about all the time we got here for hour one of the Russ Belville Show. Big thanks to Kinky Friedman for turning up at the Texas Regional NORML Conference. What a delight to listen to. Folks are in the chat room asking if I'll have that posted. Yes, I'll have it posted for download and sharing. You'll be able to find it at the Radical Russ page on YouTube. YouTube.com/Radical Russ. All my Texas videos will be going up there eventually, but I'm going to show them on 420 Radio first, so you won't catch them until after they've been presented here. Kinky's video should be up later tonight. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for hour two, Toker Talk Radio. I'm going to show my presentation of marijuana civil rights, the opening speech from the Texas Regional NORML Conference. We're also going to go off the warpath and talk a little bit about the school shooting that happened today, just less than 10 miles away from me here in Oregon, and a look at my new tattoo. Yes, I got tattooed in Fort Worth, Texas. For everyone here, for Priscilla Simon, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.